the true sense of the term. They generally don't bother to go to shareholders' meetings, which are usually held once a year. A corporation may have 200,000 shareholders, and at the shareholders' meeting, perhaps a couple of dozen show up. And those tend to be the ones with large shareholdings, such as pension plans and mutual funds and that sort of thing, hedge funds and whatnot, that may own 20,000 shares or 50,000 shares of the corporation or 100,000 shares, and they are really interested in what the management has to say and what the policies are, and so on. At any rate, the shareholders are sent a proxy statement every year, and they're told who to vote for in the Board of Governors. Now, of course, they don't have to vote for those people. They can write in somebody else. The chances of this having any effect whatsoever is practically nil. It just isn't going to make any difference. So that the boards of directors become self-perpetuating. And it's the boards of directors that, in effect, run the company, and very often the chairman of the board is now the chief executive officer of the company, rather than the president. In many cases now, high officials of the company are members of the board of directors. To the extent that in some states of the United States, for example, some states have passed laws making it obligatory for state-chartered corporations of that state to have a certain number of public directors. By public directors is meant people who don't work for the company. In effect, the management, the top management of the company, controls the board of directors and pays no attention to the shareholders, other than the rare occasions when there is a raid on the corporation. Another large corporation tries to take it over and tries to buy up large quantities of shares, or whatever the situation may be. All of a sudden they realize that they have people called shareholders that they've got to pay attention to. But normally they don't pay any attention at all. It doesn't mean that they don't necessarily run the corporations well. They may be good managers. But it does mean that the democratic aspects of corporate governance, which was an important part of the idea of the corporation in the first place, has pretty much gone out the window. These are oligarchies. These are huge, in some cases, huge industrial enterprises, commercial enterprises, huge economic entities, let's put it that way, which are run by a small group of men and women. It may be 20, it may be 30, seldom more than 50, who are the people who count with reference to setting policy, making important decisions that affect the livelihood of, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of people, as well as the degree to which society grows, the degree to which innovation is adopted, and the degree to which progress is made. And if the management is poor or bad, it means that there's probably going to be no way of getting rid of it until it goes into a major crisis, which may mean bankruptcy, it may mean something less than bankruptcy, but share prices fall constantly, sales fall, and so on and so forth, and finally management is replaced. Nevertheless, the corporate responsibility to the shareholders has just about disappeared. It has been replaced to some extent by corporate responsibility to the society as a whole, with reference, for example, to labor policy, with reference to environmental policy, with reference to educational policy, and in terms of the professional groups and pressure groups to which these corporations belong, such as the National Association of Manufacturers, the United States Chamber of Commerce, and similar organizations all over the country and internationally. These companies at this point represent a very significant non-state group of players in the international scene. And I'm going to pause for a moment here and talk a little bit about international relations, even though this is not a course in international relations. Nevertheless, because of the significance that the great business corporations have, as well as banks and other service organizations have in the world, I want to talk a little bit about how the so-called Westphalian system, the state system, in other words, where the international system was made up of countries that interacted, and groups within the countries interacted within the countries, and the countries interacted with each other, which called the Westphalian system because it was established by the Treaty of Westphalia in 1648, which ended the 30 Years' War in Europe. This is changing now. This is changing very rapidly. Countries are now only one of many international players. The great business organizations are another. The great non-governmental organizations are another. Criminal syndicates, which are extremely wealthy and powerful throughout the world, are another. Insurgent and terrorist organizations are another group of international players. So the countries have become simply one kind of unit that is operating in the international scene and, of course, in the domestic scene as well. And certainly the great business organizations are important international players, and this is what is truly meant by the term globalization, which you've undoubtedly heard 1,000 times in recent years. And the society, the world society is now truly a global society in which you have countries, of course, but you also have all these other groups that are interacting with each other and with countries as well, and many of them have their own armed forces. They certainly have their own sources of income, and in some cases, many of them are more powerful than a lot of the member countries of the United Nations. And many of them are wealthier than most of the member countries of the United Nations. This is a very important development in the world today, which is creating all kinds of problems because the mentality of the people who are running things in countries, in other words, governments, has not kept up with the developments that are taking place. And as they say that the armed forces are always fighting the last war, the government people are operating as if globalization was not nearly as widespread as it is, not nearly as important as it is, and it is, in fact, an extremely important and significant development, as is what I mentioned before with reference to the necessity for expanded capital ownership plans if wealth is not to become more and more concentrated, not only within countries, but also among countries, where some become wealthier and wealthier and others become poorer and poorer. Okay. Last time we talked about one of the principles of economics, which is, well, all sciences, which is the form of the prediction as opposed to the prophecy. If A and B, CP or ceteris paribus, or all other things being equal, then C. I'm now going to talk a little bit about another one of the great overall elements that applies not only to economics but to all human action, and that is cost-benefit analysis. Great deal of economics and a great deal of economic analysis is based on cost-benefit analysis. Now, this is not rocket science. When you take an action, any action which involves other people, or even if it does not involve other people, you will make a quick calculation as to how much it's going to cost you, not just in money, of course, or maybe not at all in money. It may just be in time and energy and effort to the potential benefit of what it is that you're doing. It's extremely difficult. I mean, in terms of a very simple action taken by an individual, it may not be difficult, but in terms of large or even medium-sized or even smaller organizations, and in terms of economic as well as social, as well as...
Sir, nobody can hear the broadcast right now. Nothing's coming through on the audio.
There's nothing coming through on the audio? Oh, God. Now can you hear me? Can you hear me now? It's showing that that is coming through. It's showing on my screen that it's coming through. Can I get smiley faces or something? Okay, so that's all right, fine. So you can hear me now. I have no idea when you stopped hearing me. Perhaps somebody could enlighten me on that subject. Where did you stop being able to hear me? So Riley, can you give me a heads up on that? Okay, well, what I'm going to do then is go back to the discussion of cost-benefit analysis. Give me smiley faces if that's where you stopped hearing me. Did you stop hearing me when I was talking about cost-benefit analysis? I'm coming through now, right? You're hearing me now. Can I get smiley faces if you stopped hearing me when I started talking about cost-benefit analysis? All right. Well, I'll simply go back to start this. Every human action involves a cost-benefit analysis on the part of the person or organization taking the action. Now, the concept of cost, of course, may be a monetary cost, but it can also be, and normally is also, a cost in time and energy and attention and all kinds of other costs which are important to human beings. In fact, if you're taking an action which doesn't involve other human beings, there isn't going to be any monetary element. It's simply going to be a question of the effort you put into it. And that's mental effort as well as physical effort. And you're going to contrast that with the benefit you expect to get from it. And that's true of individuals, it's true of groups, it's true of organizations. And when you get into very, very large or even medium-sized organizations interacting with each other and with other kinds of groups, the cost-benefit analysis can be extremely complex. Nevertheless, it's one of the more important things that economists do. Calculation of possible costs and calculation of possible benefits. Now, the element of risk comes into this also. What is risk? The concept of risk, which is an extremely significant concept, which is used by all of us all of the time, A risk is simply a possible future cost. If some action that you take is a risky action, it means that a future cost is likely. If it is a relatively riskless action, this future cost is unlikely. Now, why do people take risky action? And why do organizations take risky actions? They take them because, all other things being equal, the riskier the action, the higher the potential return. In other words, if the cost includes a large risk element, that action will also include a large possible benefit element. Because it is risky, it has a potentially higher return. That may make it worth doing, it may not make it worth doing. Here's where psychology comes in. Some people and some organizations are risk averse. They don't like to take risky actions. Some people and some organizations take risky actions all the time, and they are sometimes made to pay the price for that, namely by failure of what it is they're trying to do, or even going out of existence, which in an organization means bankruptcy of some kind, and individual means death. But they also have the possibility of a very high return from their action. So, a cost-benefit analysis is an extremely important function of anybody or anything or any organization that engages in economic action, and that basically is everybody. It may not be the principal reason for the existence of the organization, but it has to take economic actions all the time. It has to get resources. It has to allocate those resources. It has to spend those resources. It has to hire people. It has to buy things, et cetera, by the thousands of decisions every year. And every one of those decisions has a cost-benefit element. If you or your organization is going to buy a piece of equipment, for example, you have to decide what is going to be the benefit of this piece of equipment. You're going to have to decide how much you want to spend for this piece of equipment. You have to decide whether Company A's equipment is better than Company B's, which is better than Company C's. You have to decide whether you want to pay a lot of money for a very luxurious device, or you want to pay much less money for something that may not work as well because it's not made as well or not designed as well or whatever. These are calculations that people make constantly. I asked you in our first class session to do a mental experiment, and I'm going to ask you to do the same experiment between now and next week. Pick a day, or just pick a couple of hours from 2 to 4 on Friday, and try to put down in a notebook the number of times that you go through a cost-benefit analysis, and that could be as simple as going to a supermarket and picking brand A of a particular product, which costs $6 versus brand B, which costs $12. So this is something that that needs to be done all the time by everybody who takes any kind of economic action. In fact, takes any kind of action by themselves or with reference to other human beings. Okay. We're now going to move on to another major topic, major significant topic with reference to It's okay. My other technical advisor, namely my wife, has suggested that everyone turn on their smiley face at all times and then turn it off if you can't see or hear me. That's probably a good idea. And so if you would do that, I would appreciate it. Again, turn on your smiley faces, and if you can't see me or hear me at some future point, turn them off. And that way I'll know what the problem is right away. One of the great principles of economics is the productive process, which we discussed last time. A second of the great principles of economics is the concept of exchange. In other words, put it differently, what is done with the products and services? Yes, Mr. Riley.
Nothing's coming through again. I think it may be that you're going on mute at times.
No, I'm not going on mute. I'm not purposely going on mute. But, Control F2.
You can hear me. I don't think you can hear us.
Okay. Am I on now? All right. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Am I on again? I believe that I am. At least it shows that I am here on my screen. Okay. The concept of exchange. In other words, what is done with the products and services produced in the productive process after they are produced? They are, of course, exchanged. Now, what I would like you to do is the following. Take a pencil or a pen and a piece of paper and put a circle and put an A, a capital A, inside the circle. Then draw a line to another circle and put a capital B in that circle. Then draw an apple above the circle with the A and a pear above the circle with the letter B. In its most fundamental form, the act of exchange goes something like this. Individual A says to individual B, I will give you my apple if you will give me your pear. That is a proposal of an act of exchange. What it means, of course, is that for whatever reason, A would prefer a pear to an apple, and he's hoping that B, who has a pear, will prefer an apple to a pear. So he says, I'll give you my apple if you give me your pear. Now, B, of course, may say, fine, hands over his pear, and A hands over his apple, and the exchange is consummated. And that's called a positive sum game. Both sides are better off after the exchange. A preferred the pear, B preferred the apple. Now A has the pear, B has the apple. They're both better.